It's time for Pod of the Dead.
Dip the grilled cheese in it, eat it, and then you just throw the fucking soup away.
Right.
Basically just hot ketchup.
Kind of.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, and on that note, hello and welcome to Pod of the Dead, the internet horror film club that nobody asked for. I am your host, Nicholas, and with me, as always, are the two final girls, Stephanie.
Hello.
And Natasha.
Hi, guys.
On today's episode, we are covering the 2012 the horror, thriller, mystery, ooky, spooky film Sinister. Before we get into everything, what is your girl's history with this film, if any?
I saw it last year, I think it was. Drew brought it to my attention. So this is my second viewing of it.
Okay. I knew that we had laid in the basement, probably a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, with all of the children, and we did a double feature. But I did not watch any of the double feature. I watched a movie on my phone and played games on my phone while y'all just watched horror movies. And so this was one of the movies I was playing on in the background. The other one was, what was it? The
Autopsy of Jane Doe.
Yep, that one. And so I kind of knew like bits and pieces of this just from like peeking up, but I had no idea. I just know literally the entire brood of children were downstairs with us. So
our basement was just completely full, and this predates the podcast in that. So like for the longest time, Steph was not a horror person because she would get nightmares and stuff like that watching horror films. Yep. And this podcast has, for the most part, helped her kind of overcome that in a way, I like to think.
Yes.
And because she's gotten inundated with it and stuff. But did this film affect you at all?
Yeah, I would say probably. There's been a lot of stress going on in life right now, but I did literally all night have nightmares all night. Woke up twice in the middle of the night, gasping for breath, and then got up and I was like, not again. And so I tried to go back to bed and I was like, you son of a bitch. See, the difference is though, when you're old and you have nightmares, yes, they scare you, but they don't scare you like they used to when you're little. So it's just kind of like, guess my brain's fucking with me tonight. So that's kind of what happened. And then Nick said, when he came in this morning, he was like, you were doing something in your sleep last night because you were just kicking and moving. And he goes, wow. I woke up at 7:30 this morning and I looked over and it was like, pull the blanket, then slam your leg this way, then move this way. And I was like, I was having nightmares literally all night long. I'm sorry, I can't control that. And so
she was the Australian break dancer in our bed.
Yeah, it was bad. So I'm assuming that's the reason for it. I don't know, but stress added with that movie because psychological movies definitely hit me differently than like a standard horror gloopy film because those don't really do anything. So.
Yeah, my history with this film is not too long before, like it looks like we all kind of watched it in the same time because this movie I passed on a long time ago because I'm not a huge fan of Blumhouse films. This came out like after The Conjuring and stuff, and like I said, back in that time I didn't care for it. I have a new appreciation for that film nowadays. If you'd like to hear our take on that, we've done an episode on it. So I just completely turned a blind eye to it until Wesley and I started watching the Insidious films. And then this one was suggested and he was like, what's that? And I was like, oh, that's Sinister. I know it's a big budget, quote unquote, big budget horror film. Like it got a lot of like press and all this stuff. So we ended up watching it and I was like, all right, okay, and I'll tell you what I think. And then literally the next day was the double feature that Steph had talked about because Wesley was like, everybody, have you seen Sinister? We have to watch Sinister. And so he forced it on everyone and we watched it downstairs and then we watched the Autopsy of Jane Doe. But this was my fourth viewing because I saw it 2 days in a row. And then sometime later on, like between then and now, I have seen it again. And then, so we watched it for this. This is definitely one of Wesley's favorite horror films. This is like,
he was excited to watch it last night. So.
Yeah, this and Insidious are like his two things. But so this film came out in 2012. Well, before we get into all of that, Tasha, would you like to tell us what the film is actually about?
I would love to. I've been waiting to tell you. Sinister is a 2012 supernatural horror film directed by Scott Dickerson and written by Dickerson and C. Robert Cargill. It stars Ethan Hawke as a struggling true crime writer whose discovery of snuff films depicting gruesome murders and strange supernatural elements in his new house puts his family in danger.
So, interesting thing. Scott Derrickson, is that how you pronounce his last name?
That's how I did.
Okay, cool. Scott Derrickson. This is what I was talking to you girls off screen or off mic about and stuff was I'd heard that name. So then going back through like what movies he had done and stuff, there's some interesting connections here. So the director of Sinister, the one film to give Stephanie nightmares in this podcast, is also responsible for her Panic in earlier years, is the director of The Exorcism of Emily Rose.
Oh, that makes sense. Okay.
Also the director of the first Doctor Strange movie.
Ah, okay.
And The Black Phone.
I haven't seen that.
All right.
And is also tagged to be the director of the upcoming Labyrinth movie, the sequel, prequel, remake of David Bowie's Labyrinth.
Yeah, we'll see if that ever actually comes to fruition, but sure.
Writer C. Robert Cargill also wrote The Black Phone, but he also wrote the script for Doctor Strange.
First one?
Yep, the first one. So these guys have worked together on multiple things: Doctor Strange, Sinister, The Black Phone. And Black Phone, again, has Ethan Hawke in it.
Yeah.
So, like, there's, like, this, like, neat little, like, enclave of stuff that they do together, so.
So he's their Johnny Depp?
Kinda, yeah.
Okay.
Interesting thing about Johnny Depp that we'll talk about in a second it's funny that you bring that up. I'll just talk about it now. Bagul, our creature, ghosty, whatever in this movie. This is giving away no spoilers and stuff. But when this movie was originally written, that character was initially made to look like Johnny Depp's Willy Wonka from Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory was like the idea originally, and then they were like, I don't know, because it's supposed to be tantalizing to children and all this stuff. Like that was the initial.
Yeah, I like that.
The initial idea. Too. So then, like they're like, I don't know, it might be a little too silly and everything with like the tone that we're going for in this movie, and they later ended up like scouring the internet for like artists and stuff and like to get like a certain kind of image, and they came across one. It ended up paying the creator, like I think it was like $500 for the rights to use the image and stuff, and that's what they created Bagul from, was this this image that they ended up finding, and did the right thing, paid the person the cash and whatnot. But yeah, this movie also stars Ethan Hawke, which is at the time when it came out and stuff like that was a reason for me to roll my eyes. Nothing against Ethan Hawke, but I tend, especially back in the day, if there was like a big star attached to a horror film, I instantly would just be like, this isn't for me, because they're worrying more about getting big star power into it. And then 9 times out of 10, when you get this big star, then they get like plot armor and are safe through the movie and stuff like that. Like that just tends to be the case. But no spoilers.
They're the ones using the Apple products in the movies.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. They're the good guy.
They're the good guys.
But Ethan Hawke has been acting in film since 1985.
Wow.
He has 96 acting credits to his names. Most notably, he was in Dead Poets Society in 1989, White Fang in 1991, Reality Bites in 94, Training Day in 2001, and then he's on a stretch of stuff that I really like. So he was in The Black Phone in 2021. Oh, sorry, skipped one. He was in The Purge in 2013. The Black Phone in 2021. The Northman in 2022. Yep. And then he played the big bad in Moon Knight in 2022.
Yep. Yeah, he was good in that. I liked him in that.
Yeah, like it's one of those things that like I don't have any problems with Ethan Hawke or anything like that. It was just like, it's no different than like, oh, we're making a mummy film. I'm like, okay. When starring Tom Cruise, I'm like, I have no interest in this. As much as I like the Mission Impossible films, you're making a horror film and you're putting a big actor in it. it's World War Z with Brad Pitt. I'm like, I'm good.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Yeah,
But-
that's true.
All that being said, 2012, what do you think its budget was?
Oh, we suck
Big.
at this. Yeah, probably. Yeah.
Let's say $11.5 million.
I'm going to go with 20.
Okay. Well, I gave you girls a clue earlier on that if you would keep this in mind and stuff throughout all of our films, this is a Blumhouse production. Blumhouse is wildly known for giving small budgets a shot. This movie was made for $3 million.
Oh, wow.
Cool.
That's actually really well put together for $3 million.
Exactly. Like, so on its basically meager $3 million budget, what do you think it brought in at the box office?
50.
Crickets.
50?
72.
This movie brought in $87.7 million.
Wow.
Domestically, it made 48 million of that, making it the fifth highest horror film of the year for 2012, just behind The Possession, The Devil Inside, Paranormal Activity 4, and The Woman in Black. 2000
So many ghosty movies that year.
Very much so. Like, also though, notably, Cabin in the Woods came out in 2012, bringing in the 7th spot domestically, and Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter.
I liked that movie. I need to rewatch that. Yeah.
But to give you kind of an idea of what the box office was like in 2012, I don't remember us really covering this year much at all in horror films, checking this out. So the top 10 films for 2012 were Madagascar 3, Europe's Most Wanted, Ted, The Hobbit, An Unexpected Journey,
Okay.
Brave, The Amazing Spider-Man, The Twilight Saga Breaking Dawn Part 2,
Yay!
007 Skyfall, The Hunger Games. So the first Hunger
wow.
Games film came out this year. Now
That was really good.
This is a huge year. Like, so that's number 3 is The Hunger Games. Number 2 is The Dark Knight Rises.
Oh, wow.
And number 1 is The Avengers, the first Avengers
Oh,
film.
wow.
Dang.
Yeah,
So
that
this
was a
is
big year.
2012 is the year it's like Marvel just like is like, okay, we're just taking everything over. So from this point forward, from 2012 until about now, it's just like, it's just going to be nothing but Disney films.
Kind of. Yeah, that's true. And it had Twilight. That's good. I love those movies. And I was just thinking I need to do a rewatch of them yesterday. So,
So, if you haven't seen this film, right, I don't remember seeing trailers and stuff for it as much as I remember seeing the poster for it.
that's the only thing I recognize.
Yeah, it was very striking. The girl just kind of rubbing her hand across the wall, and there's like an ooky spooky image and just a sinister. And I was like,
Yep.
okay. So these are the reasons that like I just never really checked it out. It was a huge mistake on my part though, because like this film deals with like snuff films, as you had previously said and stuff. And that is a huge a trope in horror films and stuff that I really like, is like the idea of the haunted film, or this is something you're not supposed to see, like that kind of shit. So upon watching this and everything, having watched Smile and then like making connections and stuff, this movie made me make some connections and go like, this is something that I'm kind of bringing into my own like watching stuff. It's like, it definitely makes me think of like The Ring meets The Shining, because again, we have an author under certain stress and everything. We have kind of like a red herring. Well, I don't want to give away what I think the red herring is, but yeah, like those are the two big things that I thought of getting into this. So if you haven't seen this movie and those are things that possibly, you know, interest you and stuff, maybe give this a shot. Also, this is another one of those films that was subjected to an unwarranted rated R rating. So there's very little blood in this film, almost
True.
no cursing, no sex
Correct.
in this movie because
Yep.
the filmmakers were hoping for a PG-13. However,
What?
they still got an R based on content alone.
Yeah, that makes
Yeah,
sense.
of course.
You're
See-
watching murders. I mean,
Those videos, yeah.
Yeah.
I couldn't imagine this being
No.
a PG-13 movie.
involving children too. Can you imagine
Right.
like taking your 12-year-old to see this and being like, "Hey, this is supposed to be a kids' horror movie."
Right.
12-year-old,
No.
too young.
With this
12 years old's too young. PG-13, everybody, okay? I can
know
see myself
that.
taking... I mean, Wesley watched this when he was 9,
I
but Wesley's seen
know
some
that.
shit.
Yes. But like the idea though of like the topics in this movie being accessible and good for teenagers in general when
Right.
it's an adult faced film. That's the way I look at it. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I think it could have probably doubled its box office if it were PG-13, though.
it definitely
Well,
could
yeah,
have.
but at
But
what
I don't-
expense?
But realistically,
Yeah.
like, okay, so this is kind of going back to The Craft and The Conjuring. Those are two
Yeah.
films that should have been PG-13, but
Correct.
were given, like, it's one of those things where, like, yes, the content is R-worthy, but there are so many PG-13 films that do the same kind of stuff. And it's one of those things that it's just so creepy. So much so that in 2020, this movie was put into like this big thing where they just checked a lot of people's heart rates watching a lot of different films. And scientifically, this is considered the scariest film ever made because of the resting heart rate of people and its spikes.
That's cool.
Let me see here. I've got it somewhere. Okay. So in 2020, Forbes magazine conducted a study, Science of Scare Project, where the heart rate of viewers were monitored while watching a number of horror films. Out of 35 films, this one won, having the highest average heart rate of 86 and spiking at 131 BPMs. Thus is often deemed as the scariest movie ever made.
I don't think it's
Wow.
the scariest movie ever made, but I can see what they're saying. It also has a lot of jump scares.
I can
Yeah.
see why people think this movie is the scariest movie ever made.
Psychologically, it's messed up.
Like the atmosphere that this movie builds is another
Yeah.
thing for me that it's just
Yeah.
like, ooh, especially when it comes to the music. The music is a huge deal for me in this. It always gets me excited because there's like the sound design and everything, which is one thing. But then during all of the films that Ethan Hawke watches in this movie, there are legitimate bands' music that they went through trying to find some of the creepiest music by different bands and stuff, and they came across like the band Ulver, Judge Hydrogen, Aghast, Accursed, Sun O, and then the one that always gets me is Boards of Canada is playing in this.
Okay. There's a song that sounded really, really, really familiar, and I was
Yes.
going to ask you if
The
you
one
knew
with like
who it was.
the dragging drum beat and like the
Yep.
muffled voices. That's Boards of Canada.
Love that song.
It comes off their album Gyroscope, and yeah, it's such a fucking banger that like every time
Mm-hmm.
it plays, I'm just like, yes, this is so good.
Yeah, he was doing that last night when we were watching the movie. So,
It's great.
yeah.
Like it's not a cheerful scene that song's playing in, so
No.
it's pretty interesting.
Well, and it's that thing. It's that thing with like just the muffled voice in the song, and all it's doing is counting. It's like a number station almost, but it's so off-putting, just weird and creepy. So, previously, when we covered Smile, we had talked about The Ring, right? And how
Right.
a lot of people drew lines to it, but the writer and stuff was never saying.
Yeah,
it was
liar,
just like,
liar,
no,
pants on
no,
fire."
I had these ideas and blah blah blah.
Yeah.
So C. Robert Cargill straight up was like, so I watched the American version of The Ring, had a fucking nightmare about it, about me going up into my attic and finding a film of people being hung, and wrote this film. He straight up is like, I watched that movie. It scared the shit out of me, gave me nightmares. And that's where that's where I always talk about, wear your influences on your sleeve, because if you're going to Rob Zombie it and be like, I didn't try to make the Texas Chainsaw Massacre when making House of a Thousand Corpses, it's like everybody fucking knows you did. And if you just said, I like House of a Thousand Corpses, I couldn't get the rights, so I made my own film, so many more people are like, good on you.
But it's not like the writer of Smile said he didn't have any influences and it was a complete
No, I understand that.
his own brain.
But when there is super specific things, it's just almost like standing in front of it, just being like, yeah, you're going to draw these lines. Yeah, I was influenced. I always find it weird when there are very obvious influences and people will not say yeah, that's what I did.
Agreed.
Because in this day and age and everything, I always hate it when people will discredit a film just because it reminds them of another film. Because we live in a day and age anymore where every song has been written, every movie, every story has been made, right? There is no originality throughout history, correct? It's been so long. Now, you can mix and mash things together and come up with interesting ideas that you haven't seen, but there's always going to be it's, like I said,
there's a nod.
Yeah, The Ring meets, this or whatever. But some people would just see this and be like, oh, it reminds me of this. It's not original. Fuck this movie or whatever.
Gotcha.
Which I was kind of that's kind of how I came off, I think, maybe when we covered Smile. But at the same time, it just wasn't good to me. And I'm not going to smash on Smile the whole time. If you want to listen to that, just go listen to the episode. But it's the fact that these two films somehow came back to back in our lineup that there's a lot of comparison in my head to the two. So,
okay.
But you had mentioned previously stuff about the jump scares and stuff in this film. A lot of that stuff was actually not written into the script, but Jason Blum, the owner of Blumhouse, insisted on it being in the film because it tests well with audiences and stuff. So he wanted it to be more jump scary and stuff like that. All that being said, aside from one jump scare in this film, which we'll talk about after spoiler territory, I think that they're well placed. I don't think they're not effective to me because those don't really work so often with me, but they make sense in the story why it's happening.
I agree.
I agree.
And they weren't out there in your face haha, we're pausing for 30 seconds or making it go quiet so then we can do this to you. It literally flows very well with the storyline.
Tasha's giving a face. What's up?
Well, where you're talking about they're not in your face. I had a problem with some of the jump scares in this, which as the one that really enjoys jump scares, it was interesting to me. It caught me, especially towards the end. There were some where it seemed very 13 Ghosts kind of imagery jump scare. At the beginning, though, there was one towards the beginning of the movie that I thought of both of you, and I said out loud, Nick and Steph be damned. I love these. So it's cool that you guys were a little bit more appreciative of these jump scares than the others.
Yeah. This is because this is what I think of. This is the kind of bar that I hold jump scares to. Is the best way for me to describe it. It's this and Scream and stuff like that. These are effective ways to do them. Even in The Conjuring, effective ways to do these. So anytime I can basically see behind the curtain where it's these people are trying to do this and it misses so hard, I'm really hard on it because like I said, it's you're leaning on this trick that's not working. So if it doesn't work for me, it just doesn't work for me.
Yeah. They did that a lot in The Strangers too, where it was kind of in Smile and some of the other ones where it was you're just waiting for them to do the jump scare because that they're just kind of ramping up for that.
I'm trying to
love this jump scares in Strangers.
I knew you did. Yeah.
I don't know, and I don't want to give anything away about this episode yet until we get after spoiler territory, which we're almost there. But I don't know what I would say is my favorite film that it would be a legitimate jump scare movie. That's what you think of. So maybe we'll figure it out. Anyway, so real quick before we get into spoiler territory, something I found to be very interesting is for much of this film, Ellis, how do you say his name? It looks like it says Elias, but it's always Ellison, I think it's how you pronounce it. Ellison.
That's how.
Is wearing a Bennington College sweatshirt So you can always see that. One of the faculty members of the Vermont-based college was Stanley Hyman, whose wife, Shirley Jackson, was known for her horror stories, such as The Lottery, and she is the author of The Haunting of Hill House.
Oh,
Nice. I really like The Lottery. I read that short story in college, and I can still remember it. It's stuck with me.
Yeah.
And I really like The Haunting of the House.
Yeah, so
Nice.
that's like I love those kind of nods. Like it's in like Haunting a Hill House, in Oculus, and this.
Yeah.
Like there's so like
they're very some. Yeah,
this is Tasha.
yes,
Yeah.
it is. Yeah.
So, without any further ado, we're going to get ourselves into spoiler territory because I got a lot of stuff here, but I don't want to fucking ruin anything. So this movie's just been out and about forever, you know, like 2012. So this movie's been out for 12 years. You can find it on like Max. I think that's where we watched it. And it's a quick watch, realistically, in my book. So if you're looking for something ooky spooky, you know, we're getting ready to get into fall and everything. So, we're going to get into Sinister.
Yeah.
But before we get into Sinister, make sure to come back at the end of the episode if you have not watched Sinister and listen for homework for the following week. Next week's episode is going to be an interesting one. And I don't know what it is. it's on my phone. I don't know what it is.
It's going to be
Be an interesting one. Who fucking knows? It's even going to be a shock to me when I look it up. I think I know it. I don't fucking know. Anyway, without any further ado.
All right.
Yeah. So, Internet Horror Film Club, check out homework. We're getting into Sinister. Spoiler warning, spoiler warning, spoiler warning, and go.
If you'd like to be part of our horror film club, make sure to follow us at Instagram, Threads, and Facebook at Pod of the Dead. All of our episodes can be found at podofthedeadorelse.com or wherever you stream music and podcasts. If you have movie recommendations or questions for us, email us at podofthedead666@gmail.com. Don't forget to leave us a 5-star review. Or else.
All right. Spoiler, you've been warned. Give me that 10 out of 10 review on Sinister.
Yes, sir. This is the scariest film I have ever seen and I've seen a lot of them. Made me jump about 20 to 30 times. That's a bit much. They should make more films like this. Don't let any kids watch this.
Why?
They said it. I'm sure they'll tell me more. It would fuck them up for life. That's why.
About that.
This was the first film that made me jump when the credits were showing. Great storyline, too. Enough to keep you thinking and to get your mind really involved. And then bang! Another jump. Nice. Not bloody, but quite sick. I agree with that. But all for a good purpose. None of it is real anyhow, so I'm aware. Okay, great. Thanks for pointing that out.
Movie would have been so much better if the snuff films are real.
Right. I had my son watch it with me and his friends.
Hold up.
They all
Don't
no,
let
not
kids
me.
Don't let kids watch it. I watched it with my son.
I'm
maybe
assuming
he's older.
her
I don't
son's
know.
grown. Yeah, her son's grown. I had my son watch it with me and his friends, and they all thought that this was the scariest as well. I'm sorry, the writing on this is hard to read. Sometimes I felt like kicking the ass of the filmmakers as it was so friggin' scary. I had trouble sleeping that night. Damn you guys to hell.
Noise.
Okay.
All right. So let's hear that heresy of the 1 out of 10.
Yeah, it's short, so it's okay. 1 out of 10. The cell phone flashlight is a main character in this movie. Oh, it's kind of true, though. That is true. The lighting is so bad in this movie that you literally cannot see what is going on most of the time. Maybe
there is some scenes.
Yeah.
There are some. Well, there's some scenes that are like in the daytime that it's so dark that I wasn't sure if it was our TV Like,
Yeah.
because like when Deputy so-and-so shows up at the front door later in the film, like not the first time, he's standing in the doorway and you can't see his fucking face. You can't see Ethan Hawke's face. I'm just like, God damn, it's daytime and it's dark as fuck.
Ethan Hawke walking around a dark house with the light from his cell phone is not scary. How anyone was remotely entertained by this movie is a joke. All of the positive reviews on here must be from the marketing team. The only thing that was done well were the creepy 8mm films that Hawke watches to research the murders. Seems all of the budget went towards the plot device, but not the film's actual plot or filming of the movie itself. I've never really cared for Ethan Hawke, so if you're not a fan either, definitely do not waste your time with this one. Snoozer. And I thought extremely predictable from the moment you see the daughter painting on the wall in the beginning and the other children's drawings later on. Duh.
I think,
Well then.
I think one of the things that probably did the movie a disservice in that sense of like the daughter painting and stuff is that they made that the poster.
Right.
And stuff, which it's a cool poster, like I'll give it that, but it definitely fucking kind of, you know, gives away the plot. Like, oh, this is probably the one, because they set up the whole fact that it's probably the son the whole time through the movie.
Yeah.
That he's going to be the one that's affected and all this stuff.
Yeah.
Because there's two like red herrings in this film that I think, like the son, I think they set up that he is the problem that's going to be happening. And then the other red herring is that I think they do a really good job. I don't think I've ever seen this happen in a film where the red herring is that we're dealing with an unreliable narrator in the drunk husband. So like they're making it seem like maybe it's not happening, maybe it's all in his head and stuff, and they swerve on that.
I think that's kind of reminiscent of The Shining also.
Yeah, in a way, but that kind of, because it's the drunk, like under pressure author.
Well, like the Secret Window kind of does stuff like that too.
Yep, Secret Window does that. But like, I'm trying to think. I don't think though, like watching The Shining and watching Secret Window, that like the first time that I watched this, I was biting like, maybe it's not happening, maybe it's him. But like in The Shining and Secret Window, it is them. You know what I mean? Like where this movie like does it the opposite way and stuff.
See.
Like that's the thing that like I don't know, and I could be wrong. There's probably, like I said, nothing's original. It's just a matter of what you've seen, right? So you can only draw those lines. But like I really like that, like where you're watching this guy lose his mind and stuff, dealing with all this stuff and the pressure of trying to get his 15 minutes of fame again, which I think is really cool. Like I like that because I like how they build this character through like seeing just how selfish and egotistical he is, but it's not just expository dialogue, which we do get that later on in the film. But for some reason, I'm able to turn a blind eye to that for service of the film because I can't figure out a better way to get those points across. But I like how they do that and give us character development of Ethan Hawke's character.
Yeah, because the motherfucker literally moves his entire family without telling them into the house of a murder house. Like, who in the fuck does that? And then it like shows you the fucking tree. And I'm like, does this motherfucker really do this? Like, he really did. And then you got these cops like fucking, that was weird. I like the whole like, I don't want you coming into my town. Like that's like very Midwestern small town, like, you know, fucking ego shit from police officers. And it was just weird. Like, we don't want you here because you've done this before or whatever.
It makes sense. And I think they kind of give it to you in a way that it makes sense. Cause like right off the bat, it is kind of like, what the fuck? Like the first time that you really see Ethan Hawke, he's dealing with the sheriff, right? Like that's kind of like the first time. But it's like he's buying the house that these people were killed in. So of course the cops are going to be like, oh, who's buying this house? And then they're going to research it and they're going to be like, who's this guy? And then they're going to see, oh, it's the Kentucky Blood guy. And it's like, oh, this motherfucker. They're instantly going to have, and like the sheriff does give like, you know, you fucked these other things up and all this stuff.
Yeah.
I don't want you to make our town look bad, all this stuff. So to me, it makes sense as the first time though that you see it, like when they meet the first time, you're like, this is fucking weird. But it does make it make sense. That's the thing that I think this movie does really well, as like outlandish as it could have been made and stuff. I think they ground it really well in reality.
Yeah, for the most part, I would say. I think that the thing that I like about this compared to a lot of the movies we've been watching recently is it actually makes fucking sense. Yeah. And that it actually has a really good, well-written plot. And as I was watching this, I was like, this is definitely a Tasha film. I was like, it's got all these jump scares that are done pretty well. It has no fucking gore. And it has a pretty good, like, storyline.
And so all the dogs survive.
Yeah.
The 2 dogs survive.
Yeah. So I thought that was interesting, like, in itself, because I was like, I didn't know what to expect, because like I said, I'd seen bits and pieces of it in the basement, but I never actually paid attention to it. But I thought it was really, really well written. And like, even the parts where they're showing us the films where the people die, it is uncomfortable, but not in a way that it's like gratuitous. It's like just showing you what you would expect something like that to happen. Like it feels more realistic, and it's very well puzzled, put together. And what I really respected about this film is that we are finding out the shit that he finds out when he finds it out. So we are literally in line with our main narrator, I guess it is, and he's like running us through the film. We're learning what he's learning as we go along, versus us already having figured everything out, which I already knew everything pretty much because I put all the pieces together early on, but it still wasn't like that all it was handed to you early. So
there was a time, I can't remember where in the film, but there was a time that I audibly heard you go like, oh, like something got pieced together that you thought was going a different way, and they pieced it together, and you're like, oh, okay. I can't remember what it was, but I remembered hearing you do that across the room, and I was like, oh, okay, cool. Like there was like still like a surprise in the mystery to you.
Yeah.
I really liked when he watched the first video, and then he's almost as if like the writer knows the people are going to try to pick it apart, where he writes down who's recording this.
Yeah.
I thought that was done really well, instead of people like just always having that in their thought until we figured it out, that it was just like, we're going to get this out of the way. Ethan Hawke doesn't know the answer to this either.
Yep.
Well, and what's really interesting is 2 things about the films. So the first time that Ethan Hawke saw these 8mm films are the shots of him watching those 8mm films. He has no idea what's actually happening in them until he views them. So his actual reactions to these, he must have had to put himself in that position of like, this is real. What I'm seeing is going to be real. Don't think of it as fake. He's actually watching those, and his reactions are like, oh my God, you know, the people being pulled into the pool and the lawnmower scene and all this stuff. It's his general reaction to like getting himself in that state of like, I am watching a real snuff film, and reacting accordingly. And they just had a few cameras set up on him for reactions. And that's where we got like his turnaways. Those weren't scripted. Those were him in character reacting to that, which is very real. That's how you get like certain shots that, like, as funny as it may seem, there's like a scene like, you know, he's drinking his whiskey all the time and stuff. There's a part where he grabs his glass, takes a drink, and it's empty, and it's just the ice hitting his face. That's a real thing, you know, like that's something that like you would do, because in a movie, in a normal movie, if it's all set up and scripted, the only reason that he's actually going to pick up this glass is to take a drink. But the actual reaction of being like, fuck, I just need, oh fuck, like that kind of like panic of trying to remove yourself from what you are witnessing is real. And I think it's really well done in that. But also on that, all of the 8mm, the Super 8 films that we see, they actually set up a Super 8 camera. That's not like digitally done and everything. That's actual Super 8 film that they use to shoot this. So a couple things about that is like the Pool Party 66 snuff film was extremely difficult to film. According to C. Robert Cargill, the actresses who played the doomed family were actually all tied down to lawn chairs and pulled underneath the water in reality. And the filmmakers had to be extremely careful that nobody was harmed while filming this scene. Further complications occurred while filming The Killer underwater. Nicholas King, who played Bagul, had to wear weights and stay underwater for several seconds while he filmed. Since the scene was filmed entirely on Super 8 film, care had to be taken to ensure the camera was properly rolling, that the cartridge and the light meters were working. Otherwise, the scene would have had to have been reshot numerous times. So what you are seeing is what they did. It's not CG'd. They're actually doing that.
Wow.
That's
That
very
makes
cool.
it even scarier.
Yeah, like because
Knowing that those are actual people.
there's one of them. So like the first few get pulled in.
Like-
The other one, there's like one that like comes in crooked and like hits another person.
Yeah.
It's like those are real people. Because I remember watching it and I was like, that's really impressive. I wonder if those are like animatronics or whatever. You're seeing the feet twitch. It's like, no, those are
Right.
fucking real people. It's like that's crazy.
nuts.
Can you imagine being the person that it's like, hey, we need extras for this film. Do you want to come in and we're going to tie you to a thing and then we're going to put duct tape on you and you're going to drown. And then
Nope.
They were all
That's
stunt.
No amount of money.
I
no
know.
amount of money.
no.
So we get that one right. They're all stunt people. All the people in these things are stunt
Obviously,
people,
yeah.
right? But
Obviously.
so that's impressive, right? The family that was hanged on a tree while being played by all stuntman. Let me re-say that. The family that was hanged on a tree were all played by stuntman. However, when the scene was first done, the stunt coordinator botched the preparations for the scene, resulting in the actors being legitimately hanged and choked. Fortunately, they survived, and the coordinator was fired soon after. So, like,
There's no fucking way.
Why does that need to be real?
well, it wasn't meant to be real, but like it's one of those things that like the nooses were probably around their neck, and there's probably harnesses, but then something in that got fucked up, and like they're literally getting hung, and it's like that's insane. Like,
Oh my god! Wow. Okay.
Yeah, that's lovely. Yeah, there's no way. Like some of them like wouldn't be scary because like the car one, they would just take the bodies out and then
Correct,
just
yeah.
the car on fire. And like the cutting one, like that's all like fake whatever. But yeah, the drowning one would be the hardest one to do, I would think, just because you're literally being submerged in water, taped up. That's
Yeah,
just
those are
there's
the
no way.
trapped, yeah.
There's no fucking way.
yeah, the pool scene is by far the like for me, it's like the swan song of this film. It is.
Yeah.
Like I've seen a lot of horrible stuff and a lot of horrible films, and some of them were not fake. But like it plays right through the graininess and everything. And then when they're like, no, they actually shot this as you see it, I was like, no wonder it's so fucking unsettling, because
Yeah.
it feels so fucking real. And that's the thing that like kind of surprises me when people will like legit just shit on this film. I can understand you thinking X, Y, and Z is, you know, like, this is kind of bullshit and this kind of bullshit, but the effectiveness of those snuff films is crazy.
And the way that it's put together, though, like the whole like hidden box in the ceiling in the attic, and then like with a scorpion thing that's played in, and then when he goes upstairs later on in the film because he hears noises, like it's constant this paranoia that gets built up in the film that I thought was done really well as well. And he goes upstairs, and then there's the levity afterwards. He falls through the ceiling. That was weird because I did not see that one coming. But then the police officer's there, and he's like, yeah, was the thing open? No. He's like, you probably just have, you know, squirrels or whatever in your attic or whatever. And I was like, and he's like, squirrel. And then the whole, well, they don't have feet. Well, this one,
Yeah.
snakes don't have feet. And
I like that part.
I know.
It's like talking about the scorpion. He's like, well, scorpions have feet, but they're not
Yeah.
big enough.
You wouldn't,
Yeah.
you wouldn't hear it like you would a squirrel.
Yeah, I know. And I was like, that was a cute, like funny, like this guy was kind of like the mopey dopey kind of like police officer. He kind of reminded me of like Deputy Dewey kind of from the
straight up.
And but at the same time he was like very endearing, and then he ends up being like extremely helpful in this movie. Like he ends up like, hey, I want to help you with your whatever, and he's like, sure, you can find this information out for me. And he was actually like
He's
really
the one that
helpful.
puts it together. Like
Yeah,
he's the one
basically,
that. But going back to what you were talking about with the scorpion and the snake and stuff, it seems a little like when you first see it, you're just like, scorpion, snake. And they show you like later on in the film, there is some like imagery of a scorpion and
Yeah.
a snake in that.
Yeah.
What that is, though, is that in the scenes where the scorpion and the snake are shown in the attic, these are two of Bagul's forms. That's actually him.
Oh,
There.
okay.
That's what those pictures are depicting in where we get our huge expository dumps from what's his fucking name?
Professor.
Yeah, Vincent D'Onofrio.
Okay.
You know, Edgar from Men in Black.
Yeah, I didn't think that his stuff though, when we got like he came in and there was 2 different times that he was talking to him about like the things that, you know, because he reached out to him, was like, I need information.
Yeah,
and the police officer was like, it makes 100% sense. And I understand that you look at it as like exposition dump or whatever, but it's not really, because it would be the same thing that like, hey, I'm trying to put all these pieces together. Can you please give me further information? And he's like, yeah, this is the stuff that I know. And then you also have the police officer. So it's not coming from all of one person. It's coming from Ethan Hawke's character. He's piecing stuff together. Then you have the police officer who's doing actually kind of the heaviest lifting. And then you have this professor guy who has like specific knowledge in cults and stuff. Yep. And so like he comes in because of the police officer and is like, yeah, these are the things that I know. And so I felt like that was like really well put together, in the sense like you're not getting all your information from one person. They're actually kind of collabing together to get like, oh, well, let's put all these pieces together. And then now we're coming up with a stronger narrative. And when we first started watching it, I didn't know if this was just like an old person wearing a mask through all these years, or that they had like, it was like a cult where it was like one person initiation, then they do the bad stuff, and then the next one comes in. So you don't really know that until you get further in the film and you realize this is actually like an entity that is from like ancient whatever, that that's
Babylonian
actually
times and stuff.
Yeah, that's actually doing all of this. Is that creature though a real thing, or is this just fictional for this?
It's pieced together from like pagan and all sorts of different things. It's not like 1-to-1 for any one specific one. They just kind of pulled from a lot of stuff and everything. And basically Bagul translates into boogeyman. Like it is the boogeyman for the most part. So it's not like Bagul is a specific deity, because they were originally, when creating the script and stuff, it was just this demon and everything, and they're like, well, we don't want it to be tied to any religion, so that's why they went with like the pagan thing, where it's just like who knows who followed this thing or whatever. And it's kind of like the whole thing of like the sun god and this and that, and there's all these things. And I love the whole idea. It's the only point in the movie where I could see someone just going like, oh no, while watching it, is when he's talking to the professor and stuff. And he explains that, well, people believe that like he lives in the images and all this stuff. And anybody that's like witnessed these and stuff, that's just, it's not like an actual opening the door, he steps there, but it's like, now that you have seen this, he's in you, like he's around you. And I fucking love that idea, because it's like, it's too late. It's far too late. You've already done this. And it kind of ties back to the whole idea where the wife consistently is like, what's the rule? It's like, we don't go into dad's office. And like, what's the rule, honey? It's like, keep the office locked. And that is how the daughter ends up seeing the film, which then it's like, oh, okay, I got my hooks in this one, and we're going to continue this on.
Yeah, that's true.
And like he was sabotaged into essentially keeping his office unlocked by kind of not realizing what's happening, falling asleep on the couch like that. So he was like set up to make it so the daughter would go in there too. Yeah,
I think like it's all just like really good writing in my book, like which I don't expect from these kind of movies. That's why I like this movie. But so going back to like, I'm just going to talk ad nauseum about the Super 8 stuff. Like it's so fucking
it's
good.
The best part of the movie. It's 100%. What makes it what it is.
100%. So the Super 8 snuff reels in this movie aren't unlike many of the snuff reels that came up in the latter half of the 20th century. The Super 8 film format was introduced in 1965 and allowed amateur filmmaking to be much cheaper and easier for the average person. But unfortunately, this also meant a great amount of snuff reels, most of them fake, started surfacing as urban legends and in banned movies such as the Faces of Death series. Most real snuff films that featured actual murders were never revealed to the public and have been confiscated by police as evidence. The John F. Kennedy assassination was caught on a regular 8mm camera by an amateur filmmaker as an unintentional murder film and revealed to the public. Since then, it has been subject to several documentaries and conspiracy theories. This movie's snuff reels were made to look like the 20th century murder films on purpose to fit the story, which questions who the people behind all the snuff reels out there actually were. So like it took that idea of like I remember that stuff when I was a kid, like the urban legends of I grew up in horror, right? So like when they're talking about the faces of death, it's like I saw that when I was very young, which some of that has like real death scenes in, but then also fake death scenes, a lot of fake death scenes, but I think there's like one that's a real death scene.
And you don't know like what it is. Like it's not marketed as there's real death in it. It's just
it is marketed. It's marketed 100% that these are all real.
Yeah. And this is a produced movie.
Yes, and no.
It was a big thing when we were in school. That all the kids would talk about it, and it would be like, there's this Faces of Death, and then have you seen this movie? And it was, middle school, definitely.
And it's just, there's no narrative to it. It's just, here's someone in an electric chair. Here's this, here's that.
Oh, fuck.
Yeah, it's really, it's really fucked up. Like, now I saw it when I was young. I have not rewatched it or anything. I know that there's a lot of debate on whether any of it was real or that whatever, because the big thing was that it was marketed that it was all real, and most of it wasn't. But if I remember correctly, I think there is like one or something like that. Okay. But I could be wrong. Like I said, I've not watched it in 30 years. Well, not 30. Jesus Christ, I didn't watch it when I was 8. I'm a pop. But those are the films like that I remember seeing, going to the fucking like rec center or whatever it was fucking called, the movie store that was in town, and you just see like this fucking crazy cover and this one. And I vividly remember the Faces of Death cover and stuff. Gotcha. And that was the one that like it straight up. There were very few films that you were not allowed to get as a kid. Yeah. Like I could rent whatever. But that one legitimately said like on it that you could not get it from there unless you were 18 or older. So,
gotcha.
But yeah.
Okay. So what was our favorite part of this movie?
Pool scene, 100%. Okay. That's all I got.
I really like the snap scene of where Ethan Hawke, towards the end of the movie, where Ethan Hawke's like checking on his daughter, and it looks like his daughter's asleep with her back to him. Mm-hmm. And then it pans to her face, giant eyes, and then she sees the girl across from her. I really liked how that was done.
Yeah.
With the paintings on the walls.
Yeah. A lot of certain parts of this, especially like with the girl that pops up beside the head and all that, reminds me of The Conjuring. So like the whole, it's dark, and then now we have this little girl's face beside us, and then like the little girl on the ground talking to her, and then the painting on the, like a lot of that just reminds me of like very reminiscent of The Conjuring. And I liked that scene too. I thought it was interesting because they slowly but surely kind of build you into bringing the children aspect into the movie, and I liked that. So it wasn't like from the beginning, it was like slowly. And then I do wonder how well the movie would have been received if they did do more of a character that looked like Willy Wonka, that was more enticing to children instead of scaring of children, like where they're like holding hands and it's like, let me lure you into my, white panel van, that kind of concept. But I liked that. And my favorite part of this whole movie was the ending.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. If we're gonna go all the way there, I really like how it ended.
I love how it ended. Like it was the idea, other than the fact of like the kid part, like them standing there in the hallway. Like I was like, I could do without that. But the whole like the dad's drinking his coffee and you see the little note, and I was like, I wonder what that means. And then he's talking to the professor, and then like he gets up, and then there's like this note, and then he like passes out, and then you see like I'm the person that wishes that was more gory in this scene, just because I like that kind of stuff. But the dad's laying on the floor, and the mom's laying on the floor on plastic, and then
the blocking of that is super.
Yeah, cool. It's so cool. And then she's got her axe, and like this little girl with her axe, and I was like, this is fucking amazing. I love that. I hate that the fact that it's like, these kids are murdering their families, but I always wondered throughout the whole movie, like, how are we accomplishing this? And it finally kind of gives you all the little bits and pieces when you get to watch like the Super 8, the extended, that he has to piece together. And I was like, that's really smart, and a lot of it. And then my favorite was he moves to this new house again, and then they're in the fucking attic. And so like they're back and they're following him. And I was like, that is creepy. So I think the ending for me was the most successful, and that usually isn't the case. And I was like, please don't tell me that this is like a clean ending like The Conjuring is, or whatever.
Yeah, it fakes you out with that when they're like leaving. right?
Yeah.
Like the fake out endings, like, oh, it's all happily ever after, and then nope.
Yep. And then the deputies calling him to warn him, and I thought that was really cool, and he just kept like, you know, getting rid of his calls, and then finally talks to him, and then that's when everything kind of comes together. And I thought like the lighting of that was done really well, and like the placement, and then her kind of like drawing on the walls, you know, with blood and all of that was really smart. So I liked that a lot. I think that was the best part of the movie.
And I liked that we originally think that, at least for me, that they just got decapitated, and then you see her drawing, and it's they got like chopped up. It takes it like another gruesome element, but you don't see it, and you don't need to see it, because a child drawing that scene is terrifying in and of itself.
That's true.
And like, like the only thing, okay, so in that scene, with all of that and everything, when she's like, you know, dragging the axe and everything, like there's something very visceral and scary, like of someone that weighs about the same as the axe they're dragging. Like, like, how are you gonna fucking do this? But like the line that I think is fucking great is when she's like, "Don't worry, Daddy, I'll make you famous again." That's so fucking up. Like it's
so sinister. Like the name is right. It's beautiful.
Now my problem though is like that's all good. I absolutely hate though the whole like, let's all just like look down at the camera and put our fingers up. And I like the idea of them disappearing. The tilting of the head of the kids on the film, I don't like. The tilting of her head, though, I do like, because it's the reveal of him being there. I'm fine with that, because that makes sense. I hate the idea of like, you know what's weird? It's the same idea with Smile. You know what's weird? When people tilt their head. It's like, fucking stop. It's not weird. It's not creepy. But like that's my biggest like cringe of this movie is that, and then like the way like that one scene where the girl's face comes up next to his, I think that's pretty like
I agree, it's kinda,
but I do like when he's like going through the house and like the kids are like running around, how they're so much slower. It's like they're almost underwater and stuff. I like that. It's not so much that I like the way the kids look, but their actions and stuff. Especially like when he goes up into the attic and they're sitting around watching the film. I think that is such a cool scene, and it makes sense when they look at him and they're telling him to be quiet. Like I like that kind of stuff, but it's that final film of them tilting their heads and like the extended cuts of showing the kids and they're doing like that. I think's fucking cringy. Excuse me, but like there's so much that I legitimately love about this movie that it allows me to like, I mean, the pool scene exists.
And in that frame of scenes, that's the part where I don't really like a lot of those jump scares where the kids are popping up, especially the little girl. I think she's in like a yellow jacket where it pops up and it kind of flashes. In that one, I thought right back to 13 Ghosts. I really like where the older boy is in the back behind Ethan Hawke and he's kind of like leaning over ready to run after him. I liked how that was done. And I like throughout the whole movie how a lot of the things that jump scare me aren't necessarily like loud noise, face, or like the Bagul like coming into scene.
But like that right there is the worst, like at the very end, and I'll explain that in a bit, but go ahead.
Okay. But I like when like I get so excited when like you see the frame and then you notice him off in the distance. Those are the ones that I love, and it's that, oh my god, there it is, that kind of scene. And that's kind of reminiscent of a lot of what I like about Strangers, where the person you're focusing on the person you're focusing on doesn't notice it, and then you just see it and you kind of have a slight panic off in the distance. Those are all done very, very well.
Scene, the one scene in The Strangers that works for me is when Liv Tyler is in the kitchen and he walks in and then walks back out, but it's like so tucked back. That is an effective scene. It's fucking perfect. Like the movie I don't necessarily care for, but that scene, if you make a movie of that scene, right here, baby, put it in my veins. That's so good. And the idea of like you're watching the movies, you know, you're watching the tree limb fall and all this stuff. And then as you come in a little closer, there's this guy in the back. And then over here, there's this guy in the side room. And then there's this guy that's over here, the guy under the water. Like, I love all of that stuff. I love how they make it where, so he's watching the Super 8 film, but then the first time he sees him under the water, he's got to pause it and look. But actually, what would actually happen is the bulb light would melt the film. So now he's like, well, fuck, I'm going to record this on my camera. It's not, it makes sense. There is a reason he's doing these things. And I love that. And I love the fact that he's just like, fuck this. I've already seen it. Just throw it all away. Throw it all away. It's, like, it's too late. It's fucking too late, dude. You've seen it.
And I liked when he's talking to the professor that the professor doesn't know his whole story.
Correct.
Because he's just giving the information about this deity. But then like how the professor gets confused, like, what kind of book are you actually writing? Because Ethan Hawke is like losing his shit.
Yeah.
Because now he's looking for help for himself. And the professor's just like, this is just the information, like objectively speaking.
What is actually going on?
Yeah. I thought that was really cool.
And it's one of those things where like right off the rip from it, he sees the first film, he calls the police. He could have fucking like, I don't know if that would have helped anything, right? But maybe, who knows, right? But you just see his ego from that point on, where it's like, no, I'm going to be famous again. I'm going to have my 15 minutes of fame and all this stuff. And then, his daughter makes him famous.
Yeah.
Yep, that's true.
He gives up the book, they move away, and then it doesn't change his fate at all.
Yeah.
No. And then the house thing was interesting too, about like the address thing, where it was like, well, they used to live in this house and then they moved to this house, and then like they were all connected by where they lived. And I thought that was kind of cool, where it was like, well, because then it actually ties things together as to making sense as to why they're all connected.
Yeah, like, because he's just like, you either just put yourself in his line, because like the cop doesn't even know that it's something supernatural. He thinks it's a serial killer.
Yeah.
It's like, you either just sped up that, or he put his sights on you now. And it's like, and it's literally like within the next 5 minutes, Ethan Hawke's dead. So.
Yep.
But yeah.
I gotta say though, I don't like Bagul. I don't like the imagery of him.
Really?
No.
Okay, why is that?
I'm not a huge... I don't, because he's too anthropomorphized. I don't like that he looks like a man.
Okay.
He looks like a man in face paint. To me, he looks just like... I feel like it would have been more effective if he was like a shadowy figure, or like didn't have a face, or, you know, like something looked less like face paint and like shaggy hair. Okay. That took it away from me.
And it was very specific, like they did that on purpose, because like I said, like they were originally going with the Willy Wonka thing. They ended up finding this photo. It was simply just titled Natalie. They bought it, and Derrickson explained that the image appealed to him because it reminded him of the makeup and costumes worn by performers in black metal, while remaining unique enough so as not to be directly linked to the genre. Derrickson had previously researched black metal while looking for inspirations for Bagul's symbol, which is ritualistically painted in the scenes of each of the film's murder sequences. Some of the background music for these murder sequences were actually from ambient tracks by bands associated with the Norwegian black metal scene, including Ulver and Aghast. So like, all that stuff, like I can understand why you're like, I wish it was something more.
Yeah, and he looks like a black metal bandmate, and I don't like that.
I agree.
What would you like to like? Would have the creepy Willy Wonka been a better thing for you personally? Like, that's always something that I'm interested in, like your girls' takes and even my take of like, what would you do if you got to be like the producer on this film? What would you say? Like, no, let's do this. I think this is going to work more for me, because Jason Blum is basically going like, no, that end scene where Bagul jumps out, that is Jason Blum saying, no, we got to send him home with one more jump scare.
Yeah.
Like that, it was literally like Derrickson pushed back on that, and Blum was like, no, this is happening. Like there's,
it's so stupid.
It's so cheesy, but like in the sense of Bagul, what would be a creepy thing for you that would have worked better?
I like the Willy Wonka aspect of it, but along with that, I still don't like that you see Bagul in the real world. And if he was in the real world, then there was still some like distortion to it. Okay. Making it seem just like a human form, I don't necessarily care for. So if it was
more of just like a shadow, it would work better.
Yes. For you. Yeah. More wispy, more not tied, not concrete, not tied in reality. I like it when you see it in the videos. I like it when you see it in pictures, because there's still that detachment of reality. But when it's in
But when
reality.
But when he shows up and he looks like a guitarist from Slipknot, that kind of bothers
Yeah,
you.
Exactly
that
what it
doesn't do
reminded
it
me of.
for me. Yeah. So
like
if it was like a hyper stylized Willy Wonka, but still had like some odd characteristics to the limbs, or to like if parts of the clothing are still like wispy like the kids were, how the kids look like they're in a different like a different realm of reality. I like that. And they didn't do that with him. He was like grounded in reality when he like isn't in the videos.
Yeah, I agree. It looks like a Mudvayne character in the thing. So, but I think that I agree with Tasha with that. I mean, I don't hate the character. I wouldn't prefer it. I actually think it would have been better if it was like maybe everything but the face. Like you could just like the face is obscure and you can't tell what it is, and maybe it's wispy or it's like black or whatever it is, and then maybe there's the body, and the body is like I still like the idea of it being like the Willy Wonka thing, only because it's supposed to be for fucking kids, and so the idea of just like bringing them into the sense of security, but not because it's a bad guy, instead of just being the bad guy, because it's just too like generic.
What you girls are asking for is literally Slender Man.
Okay.
Essentially, Slender Man is terrifying.
Which is kind like, it's not. This came out around the same time that the Slender Man stuff started getting groundswell on the internet and stuff.
Okay.
Now, I didn't see anything of him saying that he took influence from it or not. I feel that it was just kind of like in the oeuvre of everything at the time and stuff. But like when you're talking about like a faceless entity, and that's actually how the Slender Man started, was just this faceless entity tucked back in photos that were around children. And that's what this film is. And like, so that's kind of like, you wish that they would have just been like, that the Slender Man stuff would have just make Sinister Slender Man.
Yeah.
Okay.
I feel like that would have been more effective if Slender Man wasn't Slender Man, but that same, like that same concept. Anytime that I can see the face of a monster, it takes me out of it. Yeah.
You like it having that just ambiguous, like, it's so undescribable, like almost the Lovecraftian aspect of it, where you're just like, what the fuck? It is clearly not human. But for you, it breaks that line because it's like, this is clearly a guy in a rubber mask.
Right. That ruins it for me.
It doesn't,
unless it's a monster. But
yeah, it doesn't really. I can 100% see your point of view on that. For me, it's effective in the sense of how striking it is for like the painting stuff, like the eyes, how the eyes work, and because it is just black on white, right? And you see him so very little. So it would be different if you saw him a lot. Then it would come off no different than like Michael Myers, like a guy in a rubber mask, right? But like you see him so little. I do agree, like it would be cool. I agree with like the wispiness. I think that would be cool. But like just making him Slender Man, I don't know. I'd be interested to see like someone just do a super cut of just like, they just take a Photoshop eraser on his face. It's like, there he is. There you go.
Yeah. Or even like if Bagul had like that Super 8 graininess to him whenever you saw, or something like that.
Have him jumping frame wise and stuff.
Yeah.
Like, you want there to be a visual representation of him being otherworldly.
Yes.
Instead, yeah.
I don't want it in reality.
I gotcha. Yeah, that would have been cool. Like, I like that. The frame jumpiness, the wispiness. That's all cool. Yeah.
Could it also
coming out of the Super 8?
Yeah, couldn't it also have been a woman? Like, that would have been even creepier in the sense of like, oh shit, because like you just expect them all to be men, and like if you brought this in and you made it.
There's nothing about this that's gendered other than it's big. I mean,
it seems masculine though. I mean, I'm talking about
Are you telling me that women can't be masculine?
That's not what I'm saying.
It could have been Ronda Rousey in a mask.
Oh my god, that's not what I'm saying. But I do think that if it came across that, it would be even creepier because it's like I just think that would have been an interesting like twist that I wouldn't have expected, I guess.
You're drawing a line to it like more of like a siren kind of thing.
No, because then you're putting a name to it.
I'm just saying like the idea of like a siren, like it's usually the female kind of thing, beckoning people. Like that's all I'm saying. It's like
you mention like a woman, I'm picturing like a 1950s like really demure, like, lady trying to lure in kids.
That would be cool. That would be very terrifying.
I
That
would
would be
hate that
scary.
if it's like a Victorian woman, like, yes, come play.
No, not Victorian.
No, I'm just saying, like, I like the fact that it's just like this shadowy person, and there is a form to the face, and that's it. Like, I agree with the wispiness and stuff. Obviously the only reason that like there is the male gender to it is because it is, but like there's nothing. It's the boogeyman, like, is essentially what it is. So, yeah. I don't know if I would want it to be a fucking like gothed out Willy Wonka.
But if the boogeyman could take on different forms based on who he's trying to summon.
Well, and he does
That's
the snake,
cool
the dog, because the dog's him too.
Oh, I forgot about the dog.
The snake, the dog, and the scorpion. And I wonder, like, I didn't see anything in my research, but why those three things specifically? I would be very interested to see, like, what he thought, like, other than it just being like, oh, wouldn't that be creepy? Like, I mean, the snake makes sense in the sense if you look at like Christianity and like Lucifer and all that stuff. Yeah. But like you said, like, he wanted it to be specifically not religious. He wanted it to be its own thing.
I wonder if it has anything to do, this just dawned on me, to do with the people that he's taking, because you see in her paintings at the end, I think we see a scorpion, we see a dog, we also see a unicorn that she's been painting.
In the blood?
In the blood, yeah. There are horses.
Oh my god. I know there's a sequel to this and I haven't watched it. Does he show up as a unicorn?
Maybe. But I wonder if that imagery has something to do with it, because they like really pan in on all of her pictures, and her pictures match what we saw previously, aside from, I believe, the horses and the unicorn, which is like hers.
There are also things, though, that people tend to have a phobia of, like Rottweilers specifically, like a big dog, snakes, scorpions. Like, I'm wondering how much that has to do with it.
And then there was like a smashed bug underneath it originally, which I thought was interesting. If you watch when he originally at the very beginning picks up that the films, there's like underneath it, or maybe when he dropped it, I can't remember what it was, but it wasn't the scorpion. It was like some yellow something underneath it that was like smashed in. And I was like, what the fuck is that? It looked like a spider or something. So I have no idea. Very strange.
Yeah, but I love this movie. Like, for what it is, I love this movie. Like, this is one of those movies that it's not what I would consider like this might be the perfect gateway horror film in my book. Like, in the sense of, like, if I had to do like what are 5 films that I would suggest to not an adult, not necessarily someone that's been like into horror, right? But like, you need to watch Scream, you need, all these things. And it's like, in that era of films, if I'm wanting to hit the 2010s and stuff like that, what's one of the movies that I would suggest? And it's like, Sinister is definitely like one of, like, I would suggest this over The Conjuring and stuff like that. There's just something about this for me, because like I said, the whole film thing, Sinister, 8mm. I fucking love 8mm with Nicolas Cage, which is about like the snuff film. That is such a draw for me, because it's so rooted in this urban legend / reality that exists, but I grew up with, that is creepy, intrinsically creepy. Yeah. And this is one that I'd be like, if you haven't seen Sinister, you gotta check it out. Like, I think it checks a lot of boxes. It's got the jump scares for people. If that doesn't work for you, the Super 8 stuff is creepy. I think Ethan Hawke and all of them do fucking great. The relationship of the husband and wife in this, the conversations when she finds out that they're living in the fucking house, and he's like basically gaslighting her. Well, you just asked me if we live 2 houses down from it, and I didn't lie.
He's not wrong. That's true.
But at the same time, if
a lie by omission is still a lie.
If I were to pull that shit, you wouldn't let it slide.
No, but she kept going. She didn't want to know. She kept saying that. So it was like you blatantly said you didn't want to know, and then he's trying to protect them, but at the same time, like, why would you do that to begin with? Like, that's just dumb. Like,
it came on the market. It was super cheap. They were super poor.
Yeah.
And he needs that fame.
Yep.
Yeah.
So he'll get it from being in that house. Doesn't matter what his family goes through. This is for him.
Well, and I love the way you are, like, the opening of the film, you see the hanging scene and everything, and then like, the sheriff's just like, and this this is in bad taste. And you're
Yeah.
like, oh shit. And then you see the tree in the backyard. You're already set up like, are you fucking serious?
Yeah. Who does this?
I know.
Ethan fucking Hawke does. There's so
Yeah.
many times in this film, like where he would do something. It's like, we've all been there, Ethan. We've all been there. Like he's like seeing some shit. And he just pours himself a drink. It's like, been there, dude. Falls through the ceiling. We've been there, Ethan. Well, and that I think that was another scene that happened that Steph was like, okay, I was wondering when he falls through the ceiling and stuff, and it cuts to like the cops there, like bandaging him up. She's like, oh, thank God that like the wife didn't hear this. Like, obviously she would, right? And they just like, are like, yep, the cops are here. Like,
Yeah, because it was weird. It was like she didn't come out, and he was like laying there, and I was like, and then it just cuts to people being there. So I was like, I guess she heard it or whatever, but we
Yeah.
didn't get to see her reaction, which is kind of like, I felt like that was missing something because I wanted, like, you only get to see her reactions about specific things. Like it's not through the things you would expect it to be. Like, I don't know. I feel like they just cut out a lot of those relationships because they were just focusing basically on the plot line instead of like the background children and the wife. Like they were all secondary in general.
yeah.
And I feel like with that scene, if we saw her reaction, it would kind of just be like beating a dead horse because you know she's, why the hell are you up in the attic in the middle of the night? Like it's just going to be more of
correct.
that.
And that's the thing about this movie. Another reason that I would suggest it and why I like it is it's tight. It doesn't. There really aren't many scenes that I can think of that's like you could have thrown this away. You know, like we've had so many films where it's like, what the fuck? Just come on, let's move on. This movie just keeps going and keeps going and keeps going. The only times it ever lingers is when it's on its high peaks. It's showing you the films. You know, those are the times it lingers. Anything beyond that, it's just keeping the narrative going. So,
Yeah, it's true.
all right. You girls want to get into review territory?
Yep.
Sure.
All right. I'll start it up because I've already been kind of waxing poetic about this. So what do you girls think that I'm giving this movie?
7.5.
An 8.
I'm giving this movie an 8.25.
Oh, dang.
Yeah, this movie, I said it like once we finished watching it. This is the fourth time watching it. I was really interested to see if it was going to lose its luster. I still had a fucking great time watching this movie. Like, it's very rare for me to enjoy this kind of horror film, and by that I mean specifically, like, I'm not a big Blumhouse fan. I know a lot of people like it and stuff, but like I appreciate what Jason Blum does by giving small budgets to interesting ideas and just seeing what happens. I 100% like respect that. It's just that a lot of those films just don't really do it for me. This one does, though, because it's about shit that I find interesting. I think it's done really well. I wish Jason Blum would have kept his fucking hands off of it, though, and not given us like that stupid ass jump scare at the end, because that really cringes me. But like, I can't. 8.25 could seem a little high, but there's just something about this movie. It's got some intangibles that it just works. It's the atmosphere, the music, the fucking Super 8. Ethan Hawke fucking knocks it out of the park. The kids are fucking good. The wife's good. The cops are good. There's not a fucking bad actor in this movie. It's written really well. I wish it could be a little brighter at times, but like I said, I'm able to turn a blind eye to so many of the things that normally I would give shit to, because the peaks in this film bring those valleys up so much. So yeah, with that, I'm giving it an 8.25.
Okay. Cool. You gonna go for it, Tasha?
All right. What do you think I gave it?
I think you're giving this movie an 8.
I think she's giving it a 7.5.
Steph got it. I'm giving it a 7.5. So this is the second time I've seen this movie. It didn't hit as hard, which, I mean, no movie does. But this is definitely one I'll still watch again. I really like Ethan Hawke in it. I mean, a lot of the things Nick said. I like the sound. I really like the sound design in it. I didn't notice the darkness so much. I think just because, like, that's kind of the vibe the movie gives. It felt like it was really intentional. Everything's kind of in that, like, even when they are doing outside stuff, it kind of fits with the Super 8 of the tree outside. Everything's kind of in that twilight or like dawn time that I liked. Everything's a little washed. But yeah, I didn't care for the bad guy, and I didn't care for the bad guy the first time I watched it either. I like the idea of it. It could have been done differently. The jump scares were good overall. They still got me the second time around. I did do a slight disservice because I had to finish it up. I had to rewatch a little bit of it this morning. So of course those jump scares don't get you in the daylight, but overall 7.5.
Nice.
Okay, that's good. All right, what do you guys think?
I think Steph is going to give this movie. I think you're going to give it an 8.
Okay.
I think you're going to give it a 7.
Tasha's right. I'm giving it a 7.
Okay.
So I'm just gonna say yes. I liked the movie. It was really well written. I have to give praise to movies a lot when they actually make sense, and they're, even if I don't necessarily agree with the way the bad guy looks or whatever. I appreciate when it's a sound film and the writing isn't sloppy and it actually has a narrative and the acting is done well. And yes, there are some dark scenes, but that didn't really bother me. And the jump scares didn't get me. But I can see that they would be successful a lot in this movie for people who like that stuff. And most of them, I would say, other than like the little girl beside the head and a few other ones, they were really tastefully done. So I liked it. I thought it was good. I would suggest it to people. And yeah, so 7 is pretty on par for me. So.
Oh, I think we've got ourselves a Hall of Famer here. It's sounding like, guys. What's that give us?
Definitely a top contender. That gives Sinister a 78.
Yep, good. Hall of Famer. You are. I think that you are going to like this film. You are going to like this film. I don't want to hang out with the person that's going to shit on this movie. I can understand like some people having some hangups. I've got hangups for it, right? But like, there's just, like I said, the atmosphere and stuff like that. It just it really does it for me.
You mentioned it being a like gateway horror movie. I personally think it's a little too dark to give to somebody as their first movie.
Well, that's just me. Like I'm going to give you dark films. Like this is what I'm like. Oh, you haven't really gotten like you've seen Nightmare on Elm Street and stuff like that. Like you've seen those, like the obvious ones.
If you've seen those,
the ones that you've seen the T-shirts of, right? Like you're familiar with horror, right? I'd be like, well, then you got to see Sinister. Like you got to see it. Like, is it the best horror film? No, but I guarantee you that I think it's a safe movie to give you that you're going to like because like I said, like it's gonna, like, even if the jump scares don't get you, it's at least interesting enough and all that kind of stuff, where other films, like if you're not into gore, you're just not gonna like it. Or if you're
that's fair,
right,
yeah,
like Terrifier 2, if you don't like gore, you're not gonna like it. If you don't like jump scares, you're not gonna like Smile. If you don't like, like that's kind of the thing. This one is one of those movies. I'm not saying that it's like Scream exactly or whatever, but I would fucking be like, these are two films. I can't off the top of my head think of like other ones that I would suggest, but like you want to see a 90s slasher film that's going to do a good job, it's going to be Scream because it's going to check a lot of boxes. Sinister's going to do the same thing.
Trick or Treat's going to do the same thing because it does it for everything. I just like that movie. So anyway,
for next week, it's homework time.
Okay.
Next week is a film that I basically did a test for you girls to come up with a movie that you wanted to see, by giving me like time frames and feels and all this stuff, and that's why we are going to be covering The Babadook.
Okay.
So I believe it's streaming somewhere off the top of my head. I'm not sure, but what do you got?
It's on Netflix.
Okay, cool.
Yep. So yeah, that's what we're going to be covering, and we're inching closer and closer to our 50th episode.
Woo woo!
So you've been with us for a year about now, guys.
Yep.
I think we've
Thanks for hanging on, guys.
Yeah, I think we're at our year of our first episode actually coming out as of this episode coming out. So I guess this would be like our 1 year anniversary. Woo!
Happy anniversary, guys!
We did it. We made it a year. AKA,
awesome.
This podcast is over. Done.
I always remember it's like I knew it started around fall because one of my questions to you is what happens if the Ravens are playing?
Yes.
Like we can't.
We're coming back to it, baby.
Yeah.
So for Pod of the Dead, I am Nicholas.
I'm Stephanie.
I'm Natasha.
Come back and listen to us. Or else.